What's going on YouTube? It's Tej back again with another video, and today I'm giving you my Week 5 NFL Power Rankings. Hopefully you all enjoyed today's video. If you do, hit that like button. It would help me out a ton. And if you're new to the channel, like what you see, please consider hitting that big red subscribe button. And let the fun begin. Comment your takeaways from my Power Rankings. Tell me where I'm a clown. Who do I have too high? Who do I have too low? Tell me your thoughts on the landscape of the NFL. How many contenders do you think there are for the Lombardi? I'd love to have your thoughts on the current state of the league, and I'll respond to just about every comment. So let's talk about these power rankings and the league in general down in the comments section. Without further ado, the Texans are down 3, and well, they look like the Houston Texans we expected coming into the year. Davis Mills is struggling mightily. Again, some of it's the game plan, some of it's just, I don't know if he was necessarily going to be a guy who was ready as a rookie to make an impact right away. But yeah, things are just not looking pretty there in Houston. So by far the worst team in the league. Lions lose Romeo Okwara and lose the Bears. So now you're looking at a Detroit team that lost its maybe two best upside values or upside potential players, right? Jeff Okudah tears his Achilles, and now Romeo Okwara out for the year. And it's tough. And then the offense is kind of what we expected, right? Goff is not all that good, and the weapons are limited. So the Lions come in at number 31. Jags, they battle tough. Lawrence finally looks like a number 1 overall pick, and he made a couple of ridiculous throws on Thursday. And I like that corner route out to Jamal Agnew. I was just amazed by that type of touch and prowess. Looks like a 10-year vet making that type of throw. So there are things to be happy with for the Jags. The Urban Meyer thing a couple days later, kind of one step back for every step forward you take, it feels like sometimes. But things are starting to look up a little bit for the Jags in general. Jets score their first win. How about it? It's tough. We'll talk about this with the Titans, but with a star-heavy team like Tennessee, when they don't have those stars, how do you weigh the value of that win, right? I don't know. I still have some problems with this Jets team. Defense isn't necessarily great. I know they're battling a lot of injuries over there. Bryce Hall does look like the player I hoped he would be, in the sense he's just a good young developmental corner. I think he'll continue to get better. And then we finally saw Zach Wilson make some throws. We saw all the rookie quarterbacks start to take a step forward this week, or at least the ones that got significant amount of playing time. But the Jets are right now the top of the bottom barrel right now, coming in at number 29. Falcons down 2 spots. This team is just unbelievable. I know they beat the Giants, but they just find different ways to lose week in and week out. For all the reasons that they lost, they should have beaten Washington, and it's honestly unexplainable. So, struggles continue there in Atlanta. Philadelphia, down 2 spots. They went point for point in a lot of ways with Kansas City, just not nearly as pretty as the Chiefs were doing it, right? They have the bomb that Tyreek Hill, who basically took over that game for Kansas City. And then, the Eagles are kind of scrapping it together. A lot of Zach Ertz. You're getting some Devontae Smith. He had over 100 yards. There's a positive sign. Hurts showed that he could do that in the right setting, but it's starting to become clearer and clearer that Hurts is a guy who won't necessarily lose you games or hold you back from being okay, but he's not going to be a guy who elevates you and knocks off some of the best teams in the league. So Philadelphia down 2 spots, comes in at 27. Chicago Bears, they win, but they beat the Lions, so there's not a whole lot of gravitas to that because the Lions are struggling, and they lose Romeo Okwara, as I mentioned, in this game. But things looked a whole lot better. Bill Lazor calling plays. That's something we got to monitor moving forward. And it was an offense that was more catered towards Justin Fields, to throw the deep ball. Had a lot more max protections, chipping edge rushers, trying to help out the offensive line. So things definitely looking better for Chicago this week. The Pittsburgh Steelers still looking like a team with a high school offense, and they have put themselves in a corner that there's no win moving forward. Ask Giants fans what happens when you bench the best quarterback in your franchise history. It pisses everybody off. But the alternative is leaving them out there and really struggling. And with this upcoming draft class, I'm not entirely sure what quarterback would be the jewel of their eye in that process. Now, honestly, corner is a more interesting play in the first round. But yeah, Pittsburgh's looking pretty rough. They just can't rely on the defense to do but so much. But they kept it pseudo-interesting against Green Bay, I guess. But they're still down a spot. Giants trade places with Pittsburgh coming in at number 24. Things been pretty good this week for New York teams. And big road win for the Giants. I do think it's a little fluky, right? But they definitely put Paulson Adebo on notice. They tore that man up. Kenny Golladay had some big plays. The offensive line held up wasn't too bad, especially considering the Saints have a really good defense and specific have a good pass rush. So that's a big W if you're a Giants fan. And Daniel Jones continues to look good. I mean, at this point, I'm feeling more and more comfortable. Not a Giants fan, though. I'm feeling more and more comfortable with the idea of the notion that Daniel Jones is someone who earns next year, right? Like he'll stick around for year 4 in New York and potentially work out some sort of contract extension. Now, with that said, it can't be for $40 million. It had to be for a much lower figure, but at least next year, I'm becoming more and more open to the idea that the Giants should bring him back and instead use some draft capital and some free agency money and patch up the offensive line and really see what this offense could turn into. Dolphins are down 3 spots. Man, it just looked ugly with Jacoby Brissett this week, and he's a guy with a pretty wide variance. Sometimes he battles tough, he's scrappy, he makes some good decisions, he's smart with football like he was last week against the Raiders. And then this week, 5 turnover-worthy plays per PFF's grading. I don't know, this team's just kind of in an awkward spot where, yeah, the NFL's really competitive, so this doesn't help, but the Dolphins are better than 23, just looking at talent on paper and, kind of what we thought coming into the season. But quarterback play has definitely held them back. The offensive line has done no favors. So at 2 of the most important position groups, they are among the worst in the NFL right now. So it just takes away all the value they have in the secondary and with some decent pass rushers. Emmanuel Ogbah has kind of gone on this Shaq Barrett type of progression curve where it took him a while and he's just a freak of nature athlete. But now Emmanuel Ogbah is one of the better pass rushers in football. He's not quite as good as Shaq Barrett, but he's no slouch by any stretch of the imagination. But it's kind of getting squandered because the offense can't do much in Miami. Vikings down 4 spots. Man, if you can't beat Cleveland the way they played this past week in Minnesota, that felt like a win they should have had. And this kind of feels like the first real loss for the Vikings. I think they got cheated a little bit week 1, quote unquote cheated. And they should have made the field goal week 2, right? Like that's a very makeable kick. So in a lot of ways, I felt like, hey, well, Minnesota should be 3-0. But yeah, this was their first real loss. They just were not better than Cleveland, which says a lot because that Cleveland offense was a little rough, especially throwing the ball. But the Browns defense, kind of put Minnesota in a box, and Kirk had his struggles. And that was an interesting matchup in itself. Kirk versus Baker. It feels like Kirk versus baby Kirk based off how they looked this week at least. But yeah, Minnesota down bad at number 22. Patriots down a couple spots. They battled tough, right? Mac Jones did a lot of things right in my eyes. The running game was taken away right away. So it was all on the shoulders of Mac Jones. And I think he made some big plays. They had to do it, short yardage to maybe around the 10 to 12 yard mark. They weren't doing a whole lot, airing it down the field and deep. But at the same time, they picked on, newly acquired Richard Sherman. They found matchups with Ross Cockrell that they liked. They did some good stuff getting, I don't want to call them chunk plays because they weren't chunk plays, but getting little grabs of yardage at a time and being able to work the ball down the field. And hey, they're 56-yard field goal away from knocking off the defending champs. So weather played a factor. I think the Patriots were outmatched, but they did a really good job keeping it close despite being outmatched. But they're still down 2 spots. Washington up 2, as are the Indianapolis Colts. 2 teams that, picked up a pair of road wins against teams that aren't necessarily great. Both the teams that they beat are below them in the power rankings. But a road win is a road win. Colts defense looked pretty good. Carson Wentz didn't lose him the game. Still doesn't look like 100%. For Washington, Taylor Heineke is... Take away the beard. I don't know if he's different than Ryan Fitzpatrick. He just throws up Hail Mary balls to Terry McLaurin in the back of the end zone. And every once in a while, you get a little lucky. And but nonetheless, big win for Washington. That defense still really concerns me, though. Cincinnati up 3 spots, number 18. How about this, man? I did not expect a 3-way tie, top the NFC North, or AFC North, I beg your pardon, with the Cincinnati Bengals in the mix there. But they've gotten a little lucky along the way, but picked up the win on Thursday night, and this offense is looking really good. They're getting the ball out quick. Jamar Chase has a big impact on this offense. The whole Chase versus Sewell debate. Looks like Chase was a really good selection. I don't think they would have gone wrong with Sewell to that point either. But, they did this without T. Higgins, so not even at 100%. CJ Uzoma, how about that? How about that performance? Athletic tight end, that'd be a nice addition for that offense as well. And the defense continues to be scrappy, and Logan Wilson's making plays and getting just enough pass rush. Still worried about the corners, and it's not necessarily an exceptional pass rush unit, but they're finding ways to stay competitive. So 18 feels about right for them. Carolina, got them staying pat here at 17. Look, I had them at 17 when they were 3-0, and every Carolina fan wanted to tell me how crazy I am and how they beat the Saints. But that game definitely feels like a fluke. But this was their first real test, and they lost by 8 to Dallas, but they came out swinging and got the early points, and then they made it pretty interesting. They brought it down to 1 score late. So I don't think it was necessarily a terrible performance. I'm not throwing out Carolina, but they are not the best team in football like some might have wanted you to think after a 3-0 start. So 17 feels about right for them as well. Denver, down a spot. A loss has to move you down, but who really thought that Denver was going to win that game, right? Like, if I went back and looked at the amount of bets on Baltimore side and the amount of money on Baltimore side, it'd probably be pretty heavy. The Ravens were the betting favorite in that contest. Does suck for a home loss for Denver, but I think the defense proved that it is legit, and they just need enough offense to prime them towards a win. Losing Teddy Bridgewater, that definitely doesn't help. Luck kind of in a no-win situation late in that game, trying to play comeback hero ball against a really good defense. But that said, if Teddy Bridgewater's healthy, I think this team will continue to be a competitive one in the AFC. Titans down 6, man. Like, that's an alarming loss in the sense that you were the team that made Zach Wilson look good despite his struggles. And Zach Wilson and the Jets had some tough matchups their first 3 weeks. So, like, the Carolina defense looks really good. And he saw Bill Belichick. The last rookie quarterback to beat Bill Belichick was Geno Smith. That's how long it's been. But that said, to say you're the team that didn't get any pressure against one of the weaker offensive lines we've seen so far this year, that's not a good thing. To make Zach Wilson finally look like a guy deserving to be the number 2 pick, maybe it's to the credit of Zach Wilson. I don't want to take anything away from him, but also that's worrisome for that Tennessee defense. And you take away A.J. Brown and Julio Jones, and passing game gets really suspect really quick. So definitely worried about Tennessee, but it comes down to their health. If they're healthy, they're a really talented team. But if they're not, 15 is a little too generous at that point. So they're kind of a tough team to rank here in the middle of the pack. 49ers down 4 spots at 14. Things are about to get interesting for them coming off the loss to Seattle. Now they get a chance to take down the Cardinals. And I feel like the NFC West is going to turn into this topsy-turvy. Kind of like the NFC East last year, but where the NFC East last year was because there was no clear cut, like this is the best team in the division. This year I think it's going to be because they're all really good and there's not really a clear picture to who the best team is. So NFC last year, not necessarily the most talented division and, always had one another division games in the mix. I think the NFC West this year is going to be basically the inverse of that, but still super competitive, but just because everyone's really good. So we'll see. And plus now you're getting to the Trey Lance era. I mean, there's a chance that Jimmy Garoppolo plays, but do you want to trot out Jimmy G on a hurt calf, or do you want to see what Trey Lance has? I want to see what Trey Lance has, but I'm obviously not in that 49ers organization, so obviously a little biased there. Again, I'm worried about the San Francisco cornerback group. But with Lance, maybe you elevate the offense to a point where you're able to put up enough points and you're so diverse running and throwing the football to where you can, one, chew up more clock, keep your defense off the field, get them more well-rested. That helps the secondary in specific a ton. And then you have a good pass rush to hide it as well. Or maybe you're explosive enough and you're dropping 35 a game and it doesn't really matter at that point. So we'll see. But San Francisco, a couple of losses back-to-back. Tough territory for San Fran. The schedule has not been a friend of theirs. I got the Raiders holding tight here at 13. I know they lost by 2 touchdowns, but in LA, I don't know, with the weather delay, that was just kind of a weird game in general. I'm not out on the Raiders. I think, you lose a game on the road, it shouldn't be the end of the world, but definitely could have knocked them down, but I also still like them more than the 49ers at this state, like them more than Tennessee at this state. Denver, I take the Raiders versus those 3 teams. Seattle up 4 spots there at 12. This is just a roller coaster of emotions with Seattle. Are they good? Are they bad? I don't know. This week they looked better. They were able to hide the secondary and come up with a big road divisional win. So a lot of credit there to Seattle. They're coming in at number 12. New Orleans down 3 spots. You talk about a roller coaster. Here it is again. This week it just felt like they didn't want to have Jameis aired out and put the ball into his hands, and they didn't want to risk it, which I totally get. So as a Saints fan, maybe you're saying, hey, we can lose games and it's not all because of Jameis Winston. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that's a bad thing, though, at the same time. I don't know. This Saints seems kind of tough to get a reading on. I thought this defense was going to be spectacular. This past week, while it wasn't necessarily, horrendous, Paulson and Debo got picked on. The pass rush wasn't great against the Giants, which we definitely would have expected that, just looking at the 2 teams on paper. But also, first time playing at home, truly at home this year, there's a lot of emotions that come with that. And sometimes we just correlate that as a positive thing, but sometimes it plays out as a negative, which is weird to say. But I don't know. Another weird game for the Saints. This 13 through 11 spot is just kind of really quirky in nature. Dallas Cowboys at number 10. it's tough to contain this offense. So, give credit to Carolina for being able to do it as long as they did. But eventually the offense shows for Dallas, and it continues to look really, really good. Trevon Diggs, 5 picks in 4 games. And that's obviously a tough trend to continue. What does this team look like when Trevon Diggs isn't creating all these takeaways? Also, nearly got beat by DJ Moore one time. So there's kind of the boom or bust element with Diggs. But the Cowboys are feeling like serious contenders right now. They're feeling pretty good. And plus, playing without DeMarcus Lawrence, right, when he gets back in the mix, that's just one more star-level player on that defense that helps even out the equilibrium in how we view this team. And if that defense gets slightly better, then, things are looking good for Cowboys fans across the country. Baltimore Ravens coming in at number 9. They're up 5 spots, but again, it's kind of muddled here in the middle of the pack. Like, honestly, you could make an argument for Raiders being here at 9. I wouldn't necessarily be able to knock you, but Baltimore went on the road, picked up a win against an undefeated Broncos team. Now, I know 3-0 isn't necessarily the same for everybody, but Denver, I think, is still pretty good, and I have them ranked ahead of Carolina for a reason. I have them ahead of Cincinnati for a reason. Those are 2 other 3-win teams that don't feel quite as good to me as the Broncos do, though it's close. They're not necessarily super far apart. But anyways, like I said, this middle of the pack up towards number 8 and 9 feel a little crowded. On to number 8, Cleveland Browns down 6 spots. Look, they won. And don't focus on the down 6 spots because, a lot of teams got back on track this week. And again, it's just a clunky, convoluted towards the top of this power ranking. And the NFL is as competitive as it's ever been. So there's a lot of arguments that teams should be higher, or I'm crazy for putting some teams over another. It's just as competitive as I've ever seen the league. Browns at 8. It looked ugly. I'm starting to get worried about that OBJ Baker Mayfield connection. This week, Baker just didn't play well, so I don't want to put too much on that. It might have just been a down week for him, so maybe he'll bounce back and OBJ will have a big week next week with it. It didn't look terrible against Chicago a week ago, but so now we've gotten one okay, one bad. I need to see more there before I make a true decision. Good news for Cleveland. That defense looks really good. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah is everywhere. Myles Garrett's fantastic. This looks like a good unit that's only getting better as they become more and more familiar with one another. So that's a positive sign despite being down 6 spots. Held the Chargers here at number 7. They picked up the win. That's why I didn't want to move Cleveland ahead of them, despite they both won. Chargers did it in more convincing fashion, right? Herbert made some big throws. I mean, he's just so fun to watch. He's like a machine. You just plug in the input and the throw's there on the money every time, or almost every time. And then the defense continues to look really, really solid, right? Like the Raiders offense had been the talk of the town. Derek Carr's throwing for 350 yards in every game coming into it. That defense can win some big stops and some big plays. In that one, big home win for LA. The other LA team, the Rams, come in at number 6, down 5 spots. It was a natural letdown week, right? Like you take down the best team in football in my eyes, and you do it at home, and there's a lot of emotions riding on it. That's as high as a point in the year as we'll see for the Rams. Natural letdown the next week, but it wasn't even necessarily close with the Cardinals. And that's why the Cardinals come in at number 1. It wasn't a game, honestly. Right out the jump, the Cardinals jumped all over the Rams, and they kind of just got that initial punch in a boxing match and just stunned the other guy. That's kind of what it felt like, and the Rams just got a taste of their own medicine and clearly didn't like it on the way down. So Rams down 5 spots, but I think they're okay. I wouldn't be worried about this loss too much. That NFC West, again, it's going to be topsy-turvy. Packers move up a spot to number 5. It wasn't necessarily the prettiest or cleanest win, and Pittsburgh I don't think is all that good. So other than the name wreck that we normally associate the Steelers with being a good quality football team, this wasn't the best win that we'll see from Green Bay all year. Plus, I'm worried about that Jair Alexander injury. As the week goes on, we'll get more and more updates there. But I'm worried about his potential status moving forward. But Green Bay did look pretty good, and they certainly looked a lot better than the Steelers. Kansas City Chiefs are my 4th team in this power ranking, also up a spot. The offense looked really good, right? And Tyreek Hill he had one of those weeks. He does it once or twice a year where he just takes over, and he is the X factor and the difference in any given week. But that defense is looking rough, to say the least. Like they're getting picked on by Jalen Hurts. Yeah, that might be a problem. Only 2 teams in the league have allowed points on more than 50% of their defensive drives: the Washington football team and the Kansas City Chiefs. And the Chiefs aren't a team that's predicated on having an elite defense like we thought Washington was, so it's more concerning for the Washington football team. But man, Kansas City, they can't be that bad. Like if you want to be a serious Super Bowl contender, you need to have an elite offense, but you also need to have a competent defense. You can't be this bad. So maybe some moves need to be made in the future, whether it's free agent signings or some trades. But yeah, not quite a complete package for KC so far, but they are up a spot. Bills, they've just been blowing fools out. I mean, picking on the Dolphins, topping Washington, it wasn't even close, and then blanking the Houston Texans. Granted, 3 teams that are not in the playoff mix, right? Miami has struggled mightily, and plus that was mostly Jacoby Brissett relief coming after the Tua injury. Washington, 2-win team, but they don't look like a team that we expected them to be coming into the year, and the Texans are my number 32 team. So this is a prove-it week if I've ever seen one. Going against Kansas City on Sunday Night Football, they've been killing it with primetime football this year with the NFL. Every game's been super competitive, or almost every game's been super, super close. And I'm hoping the same this upcoming Sunday between the Bills and the Chiefs. So big prove-it game ahead for Buffalo. Bucks up a spot. I know it was close, and Brady didn't necessarily look great, but you have to account that to the weather. Sure there's emotions part of it as well. But overall, this team found a way to win despite losing Jamel Dean, right? Like playing without Sean Murphy-Bunting. Carlton Davis goes down. That's a big injury I'm worried about. Quad injury. He'll probably end up missing some time. Hopefully it's nothing too significant if you're a Bucs fan. Richard Sherman picked up right off the streets. Didn't necessarily look amazing, but he also didn't give up any huge plays, so that's fine right away. And honestly, good teams just find ways to win. And this felt like one that, Tampa wasn't for sure the better team, right? They didn't push New England around, but it stayed close for whatever reason. This was just a scrappy, hard-fought game, and Tampa Bay found a different way to win, right? Like the passing game wasn't electric. They didn't pour on a ton of points. It became a defensive stalwart. Lenny Fournette ran the ball well, and they did just enough to come away with a win. So good teams find ways to do it, and I mean that's kind of the Tom Brady nature of it, right? When he was in New England, some years they were an elite offense, airing it out, going 3-4 wide, and some years they were pounding the rock, 2 tight ends, and some years early on it was a defensive-focused team, and then by the latter half of his tenure there in that dynasty, it was an offensively focused team. They find different ways, and that's kind of a Brady trait, it feels like, and it's carried with him to Tampa. Big road win for the Bucs. And the Cardinals come in at number 1. Cardinals fans, just like Carolina, and Colts fans, convinced that I hate them, but I definitely don't. And I don't think the Cardinals are necessarily the best team in football long term. This is not my Super Bowl prediction. I say this every week. This is not me saying the Cardinals, they're the best team. That's it. Everyone else go home. The year's over. Not at all. But as it stands right now, they're 4-0, and they blew out the Rams. They did it in such a convincing fashion. I have to give them credit where credit is deserved. Right now, the Arizona Cardinals are playing like the best team in football. That's going to do it for my Week 5 NFL Power Rankings. Tell me what you think down in the comment section. Where am I right? Where am I wrong? Who's too high? Who's too low? Tell me why I'm a clown. Love to have your thoughts. I'll respond to just about every comment. So let's talk about these Power Rankings down in the comment section. Hopefully you all enjoyed today's video. If you did, please hit that like button. It would help me out a ton. And if you're new to the channel, want more sports content, just hit that big red subscribe button. That's going to do it for today's video. Hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day. And until next time, my name is Tej, and I'm signing off.